They walked into the room alive, naked, afraid, clutching their children, and left only as smoke rising from the crematoria. Inside the gas chambers of Auschwitz-Birkenau, horror was not spontaneous. It was planned, rehearsed, and executed with mechanical precision. Victims were told they were going for a shower. Instead, they were sealed behind steel doors, left in darkness and confusion as the vents opened above them. Panic filled the chamber. Screams echoed. People clawed at walls, trampled each other, reached in vain for air. Minutes later, silence. This was not just mass murder. It was murder disguised as routine. The Nazis built an entire system to carry out death with industrial efficiency. Over 1 million souls were lost here, many within these walls. What happened inside the gas chambers was a calculated descent into inhumanity, and a truth the world must never forget. Auschwitz-Birkenau was not merely a concentration camp. It was the centerpiece of the Nazi extermination machine. Located in occupied Poland, the complex was initially established in 1940 as a detention site for political prisoners. But by 1942, it had evolved into the largest and most lethal of all Nazi camps, as part of Hitler's final solution, the plan to annihilate the Jewish people of Europe. Auschwitz consisted of 3 main parts: Auschwitz I, Auschwitz II-Birkenau, and Auschwitz III Monowitz. Birkenau became the primary site of mass murder. Its sprawling grounds housed multiple gas chambers and crematoria, built to eliminate people on an unimaginable scale. Trains arrived daily, packed with Jews from across Nazi-occupied Europe. Most were sent directly to their deaths upon arrival, without registration or records. Men, women, and children were separated, judged in seconds by SS doctors. Only a small percentage were selected for forced labor. The rest were marched straight to the gas chambers. In total, more than 1.1 million people were murdered at Auschwitz, the vast majority of them Jews. This context sets the stage for the horror that unfolded inside those killing rooms. The killing at Auschwitz-Birkenau didn't begin with violence, it began with lies. Upon arrival, victims were greeted by SS officers who calmly assured them they were simply being relocated for work. Families were told they needed to shower and undergo disinfection. This deception was deliberate. The Nazis understood that fear caused resistance, and resistance disrupted efficiency. So they created a process designed to maintain calm right up until the final moments. Victims were led into what appeared to be standard facilities: undressing rooms labeled with signs, walls hung with hooks and numbered pegs for clothes, even fake shower heads installed in the ceilings of the chambers themselves. Mothers clutched their children, trying to reassure them. Elders leaned on walking sticks. Some prisoners, forced to assist under threat of death, offered gentle instructions, urging newcomers to remember where they placed their belongings for after the shower. Once the chamber was full, often packed to the point where movement was barely possible, heavy steel doors slammed shut. The room was sealed. What had moments earlier seemed like an ordinary, if unsettling process, now became a trap with no escape. Victims were in total darkness, surrounded by hundreds of others, all beginning to sense the truth too late. Panic would set in, but there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The very architecture of the chamber turned deception into death, silently, efficiently, and without mercy. Inside the sealed gas chambers, time slowed, and terror exploded. As the doors locked, victims found themselves trapped in a windowless, airless space, packed shoulder to shoulder. In the chaos, some screamed, others prayed, many simply froze. Moments later, through special openings in the roof or walls, the killers began the final phase, releasing gas into the chamber. The reaction was immediate. Within seconds, people began choking, gasping for air that no longer sustained life. The room erupted in panic. Mothers lifted children onto their shoulders in a desperate attempt to reach cleaner air near the ceiling. Others clawed at the doors or climbed onto the bodies of those who had already collapsed, trying to escape the inevitable. The shrieks of hundreds merged into a single, haunting sound, a sound that lasted minutes, then faded into silence. Death did not come instantly. It could take 10 to 20 minutes for everyone to die, depending on conditions inside the chamber, how many were packed inside, how long the gas took to circulate, how the victims responded. The horror of these final moments was etched into the memories of those forced to witness the aftermath. Once the screaming stopped, SS guards waited before opening the doors. What they found inside was a tangled mass of bodies, piled high, stained with blood and waste, frozen in grotesque poses of agony. This was the result of Nazi engineering, mass murder, carried out with terrifying routine. When the doors to the gas chambers were finally opened, the horror didn't end, it shifted. The task of cleaning up the aftermath fell to the Sonderkommando, special units of Jewish prisoners forced, under the constant threat of death, to handle the dead. These men were not collaborators by choice. They lived at the edge of life and death, and their survival depended on obeying the most horrific orders imaginable. Their work began immediately. The chamber, now silent, was filled with a chaotic pile of bodies, some still warm. Victims had collapsed in layers, the strongest often on top, having climbed in desperation. The Sonderkommando pulled apart these tangled masses, searching the corpses for hidden valuables, rings, earrings, gold teeth. Anything of material worth was extracted for the Nazi war machine. Next came transport. Bodies were hauled using lifts or carts to the crematoria ovens, or, in times of overflow, to open-air pits where they were burned in heaps. The stench of death and smoke hung over Birkenau, inescapable. The Sonderkommando worked with speed, knowing another train would soon arrive. They cleaned the chambers, washed the floors, and readied the space for the next wave of victims. They could not speak of what they saw. Escape was impossible, and discovery meant immediate execution. Most Sonderkommando survived only a few months before being murdered themselves, killed to silence the witnesses. Yet some managed to leave behind buried notes, photos, and testimonies, fragments of truth in a place built on lies. Despite the unimaginable terror they endured, some members of the Sonderkommando found the courage to resist. In October 1944, one of the few armed uprisings inside Auschwitz took place. Sonderkommando prisoners at Crematorium 4, using smuggled explosives from a women's labor unit, blew up part of the building. They attacked SS guards with makeshift weapons, killing a few before being overwhelmed. Almost all participants were executed, but their act of defiance sent a powerful message. Even in the heart of the Nazi death machine, resistance was possible. Other prisoners fought with words and images. Some risked everything to document the atrocities, writing notes in secret, burying them near the crematoria, and even taking covert photographs. These records, discovered after the war, became crucial evidence of the crimes committed at Auschwitz-Birkenau. In a place built to erase people and truth, these fragments survived, silent screams from beneath the ashes. As the Soviet army advanced in late 1944, the Nazis scrambled to erase the evidence of their crimes. Heinrich Himmler ordered the destruction of the gas chambers and crematoria at Auschwitz-Birkenau. Crematoriums 2, 3, and 4 were blown up by the SS, and the Nazis began dismantling infrastructure, burning documents, and evacuating prisoners. It was a last, desperate attempt to hide the scale of the genocide. But they couldn't erase everything. When Soviet troops entered Auschwitz on January 27, 1945, they found about 7,000 survivors, sick, starving, barely alive. Scattered among the ruins were thousands of items: clothing, shoes, human hair, suitcases with names still visible. These remnants told the story the Nazis tried to bury. The liberation of Auschwitz marked the beginning of the world's reckoning with the Holocaust. What was uncovered shocked even battle-hardened soldiers. The gas chambers were gone, but the truth, seared into memory, remained. What happened inside the gas chambers at Auschwitz-Birkenau was not simply mass murder, it was the mechanized annihilation of humanity. Every victim had a name, a voice, a story. These chambers weren't just places of death, they were instruments of total erasure, designed to strip people of their identities before extinguishing their lives. In minutes, generations were lost, and the world was forever changed. But Auschwitz didn't appear overnight. It grew from propaganda, dehumanization, and silence. The gas chambers were the end result of a process that began with words of hate, division, and exclusion. That is why memory matters. Remembering the victims is an act of defiance against forgetting, and a defense against repeating. Today, the ruins of Auschwitz stand as a chilling reminder. Survivors are few. Soon, only history will speak for them. And the question we must all ask ourselves is this: when the warning signs appear again, will we recognize them? And more importantly, will we act?